All right. House Education, February 18, 2026. Just some time for the committee to regroup, pick up from where we left off yesterday, take into account some of the testimony we've heard today. So maybe we could talk a little bit further about CISAs. We were discussing yesterday sort of the big question of how to fund, whether to fund, mandatory versus voluntary, what the governance would be, accountability within that. Would like to start us off. Why don't we talk about, first of all, is this a sort of map we want to draw, or do we want to say that CISA should grow organically? And I'm using BOCES and CISAs interchangeably. I think, kind of given what we heard today, maybe we just need to change it to CISAs from now on. Which is one thing, sounds like we could at least agree on one
Yes.
thing.
I think we can agree on that till we hear from some other quarter that says, no, don't call it that.
BOCES has been a challenge
Yeah.
because in New York State, that's CTE, and other states, it's a location, yeah.
And that's what happened, I would say, in the school redistricting task force work is we had originally called it the BOCES proposal and changed that to CISA, but
Who wants to say something about CISAs?
I can start.
All right.
And then since we just started discussing BOCES in this committee, last session, always been in favor of them. I think they have a place. I'm still trying to figure out their place in the whole discussion that we're having now. And I think there is one, but I don't know where it is. So I'm still kind of lost on this whole thing. I see that they will have a benefit, but I also need to understand the underlying, or any other lack of word, map that we're talking about before I can really grasp this whole BOCES concept. My struggle, I guess,
Yep.
is what I'm throwing out there.
Yeah, the time frame. Doing that type of thing. I've heard that it can take many years to develop one to be functional within a system. It's the concern.
But, we have no experience other than the one in southeastern Vermont, which, is 7 years in the making, but it didn't start off with the BOCES enabling legislation, which does now exist.
How did the BOCES enabling language help them get it done?
So I'm going to answer a little bit, but then Emily, I'll look to you. Here's, to me, the advantage of the BOCES enabling legislation is previous to that, what you really had were cooperative agreements. But one school district had to be the umbrella entity housing all the paperwork, the money, the writing out checks. And I know in my area, when we've done cooperative things like this, usually to start an all-day program, as soon as one district doesn't feel like they need it anymore, they drop out and everything falls apart because they don't have any obligation to stay in. So that's how enabling legislation helps, because it's sort of as you join, you're in, you're all in. You can't come and go as you please. Yeah, please.
That's exactly everything. I agree with everything. And I'll just say locally, I'm speaking from my interpretation. I was not a part of the work that's been going on for 7 years because I'm not an administrator down there, and it was really led by, my sense was it started with the Southeast Superintendents Association organization, which is essentially what the map you see when you see a map around that. And based on need. And when the legislature passed the BOCES legislation, the cooperative down there, Southern Rhode Island Cooperative or something, recognized that they were a good fit and started the process. But as we corrected last year, that to actually really go into it, they needed the money upfront for the start. And we made that change last year to have that $10,000 grant not happen at the what do you call it, the implementation of the BOCES, but at the start of the process. And I think the 7 years wasn't the amount of years it took to create a BOCES. I think that's important to know. This BOCES, in the way it functions today, really only has been created since the law's passed. And so, but the cooperation was happening for 7 years and successfully, but not as intentionally as the legislation allowed them to be. And so I think that's kind of a summary of my interpretation of it being sort of once removed. And I'm grateful to be once removed because I really do believe, as I've said here before, this is really to help the administrative functions of our entities to make them more efficient, or our districts to make them more efficient.
Oh, I was taking another look at the task force report. So they did propose a map or a mapping concept for CISA. So I don't know if it's helpful for us to take that as a starting point for the discussion.
Any starting point for discussion is a good starting point.
Yeah, well, and just refreshing my memory, because it's been a while since I looked at this report. You know, it might maybe just be helpful for the committee to revisit that.
So the map they proposed was the superintendent's regional map.
I'm not sure. It's
Essentially,
5, but I feel like I've seen so many maps, I don't know how they all compare to each other. But folks could pull it up. I can email the link out.
Chris, go ahead.
Just some point, maybe a walkthrough of our whole facility that we have in place. I'm just trying to test my memory right now of, if I remember right, you didn't have to join it voluntary. So you could pay a fee for service to any BOCES. So it doesn't matter where in the state, like somebody down in Brattleboro could pay a fee for service to a BOCES up in Franklin County, if that were the case, right? Yes, for the services. And does that model still work with what we're talking about now?
Well, first, let me get to your first question.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Would a walkthrough of the BOCES Act be possible?
Right now?
Yeah.
And just a quick.
While you're setting up, Josh was next, then Rob.
So Chris is saying you could opt to do fee for service. CVSU can ask wherever. But if you join the CISA now, if you join it, you're gonna, but if you don't join, you can pay for services if you like.
Assuming they'd be willing, they're under no obligation to provide those services. Whereas if you are a member of it, there's a certain obligation.
Thank you.
The BOCES down in Rep Long's area, were they the ones paying those last year? They wanted the $10,000?
Yeah.
That's okay, right.
Yeah, but that was to create their articles of agreement.
Right, and because there was that flip flop, like, we need it now, like, yeah.
So as we run through this, we sort of created it from a very voluntary point of view, but, we should decide if we want to make up regions and make it mandatory. If we make it mandatory, we have to define what that means. Is that everybody's got to come up with money to fund an executive director? If so, proportionally, how's that going to happen? All these things to flesh it out. Representative McCann?
It's really hard to come up with an answer when you're looking at it in isolation.
I kind of see
Yeah.
like districts created. And then the seesaws being somewhat umbrellas that are kind of held over a few of the districts. The seesaws being, so you're under their umbrella. I mean,
Yes,
voluntary or not are we gonna make districts voluntary?
right.
Are we gonna make them mandatory? I need to know that answer if I'm gonna answer the question you just asked.
Okay.
Right.
But I will tell you
And I will
my,
need
tell you my,
opposite too.
my discussion. Can't have both. But my discussion strategy here is to, is there something we can agree on? Since we can't seem to agree on districts and maps at the moment.
That's a question, mine's very similar, is, it's again that chicken and egg thing, because if you create a CISA map and it's mandatory, if you're then after that create districts, do they have to follow the lines you've already created for the CISAs? Or would they move to a different one? So. Good question.
Didn't you have a question? Oh, okay. Can I just,
Yeah,
sorry, don't mean to interrupt, but I'm mindful of what everyone's saying and recognize also that there is a seesaw put in place without redistricting. So I'm not hung up on the possibility of that expanding or shrinking either in the future around new lines. I think it could happen because it's a model that we dive into. And I think the legislation, which we're going to hear about right now, would allow.
I'll be very honest with everybody. We could, right now, as I keep joking, the map that I put forward would be voted out of here on a 0 or a 1-10 vote. So in a way, I'm saying, if we're never going to get to an agreement on this, what could we agree to with CISAs? Because we seem to be in agreement with CISAs. I totally respect Kate's point of view here and frankly agree with it. For me, it's more just a matter of us trying to come to some consensus on something other than H802.
Which is great work.
But for a little break, if you wouldn't mind.
St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. So, I'm just getting signed in. I'll walk through the law as it stands now, and then we'll look at the Act 168, which is the enabling act for BOCES, because there's some transition language that's in session law that may be germane to your conversation. So. And I know you all know this, but I feel as though I need to say it for my peace of mind. You can call them whatever you want, but it's not going to happen unless you ask me to draft something. So right now, these are BOCES.
Maybe we'll settle one issue first. Could you provide some language for our miscellaneous ed bill that would update the name?
It's going to be a lot of language. I'll talk to my colleagues. There is a large chance that it's just strike throughs of all of, so like multiple pages with that being the only change, just so you're not horrified when you see multiple pages. Okay.
And we are going with cooperative educational service agencies. Is that the full correct?
Areas.
Areas. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
Is it CISAs or seesaws?
That's a personal preference.
Seesaws.
I like the swirl. I like the seesaw.
You don't bring your regional plan into the.
Sir.
Beth, did the task force have a ruling on that?
It is cooperative education.
Oh, no, I'm only talking about the seesaw or seesaw.
ESA.
Pronunciation.
Seesaws.
Share with everyone what you shared with me, the
And really-
pronunciation.
Seesaw?
Seesaw.
We didn't get into the whole, thing, but like I said, originally we were using the term BOCES because that's what was in
Yeah.
our language. We heard from, I believe it was the special educators organization that we just heard from this morning and said it has this connotation that's linked specifically to special education in the field. And if this is going to be a broader thing than just providing special education services, the term BOCES should probably be replaced because of the historic connotation. And just, we said, oh darn, because we already had a cute acronym to describe the plan using the letters in BOCES. Now we're gonna come up with another presentation. But that was really the reason for changing it to cooperative education.
Mhm.
So, your cooperative education services language lives in Title 10 in Chapter 16, starts with some policy. And the first line here, I think, is like a really important policy piece for you all to keep in the back of your minds. And that is that it is the policy of the state to allow and encourage supervisory unions to create boards of cooperative education services. All of this legislation, all of current law, it has supervisory unions as the members. To create these boards, to provide shared programs and services on a regional and statewide level, formation of a BOCES shall be designed to build upon the geographically focused cooperative regions used by Vermont superintendents as of July 1, 2024. To write in your policy. Maximize the impact of available dollars through collaborative funding. Reduce duplication of programs, personnel, and services. Contribute to equalizing educational opportunities for all pupils. So we start with some definitions. I'm going to skip over these. Largely, educator has to do with tying into teacher bargaining and retirement plan. But here we have definition of supervisory union, which again is an administrative, not a governance structure created by the state board. It consists of 2 or more school districts. This term also means supervisory district. And this is for this chapter. So we're not amending the overall definition. We're just saying there's no confusion in this chapter. There's always confusion, but that's the intent. Creation of board of cooperative education services, organization, secretary approval. So how does a BOCES form? Well, the board, this is very similar to how a union school district would form. The boards of 2 or more SUs would vote to explore the advisability of entering into a written agreement to provide shared programs and services. And then the interested boards would meet and discuss the terms of any such agreement. Then at this meeting, or however many meetings it takes, if everyone decides that they want to form a BOCES, they would enter into a proposed agreement to form an association of SUs to deliver shared programs and services to complement the educational programs of the member SUs cost-effective manner. And that association would be known as a BOCES. And it would become a body politic and corporate with the powers and duties afforded them under this chapter. That is a fancy way to say that they're a quasi-governmental body. They're not, I think you were talking before about what happened before this law was passed when there were education cooperatives, and those were private organizations. This is now a arm of the government. Articles of agreement. So this is their governing document. Agreements to form a BOCES pursuant to this chapter shall take the form of articles of agreement and shall serve as the operating agreement for a BOCES. Agreements shall include a cost-benefit analysis outlining the projected financial savings or enhanced outcomes, or both, that the parties expect from their shared services or programs. No agreement or subsequent amendments shall take effect unless approved by the member supervisory union boards and the Secretary of Education. Secretary shall approve articles if the Secretary finds the formation of the BOCES is in the best interest of the states, the students, the member SUs, and aligns with the policy in section 601 that we walked through first, subject to the limitations of subsection D of this section. And that's where you limit BOCES to no more than 7 in the state.
Can I ask a question? The word up top, more complement, caught me. What does complement use in this aspect? Are we talking, because to me, BOCES weren't created to do the same thing as the district or a supervisory union already is. It was supposed to create something that can be used regionalized. So it wasn't adding the same service. Does complement mean? I just,
Where is it?
up top, up in the,
There. About 4 lines up from the bottom of paragraph A.
deliver shared program services complement.
Educational programs, right? So, I can't breathe legislative intent into this language. That is a job for you all. I read this language to mean it's not complementing the duties of the SUs, it's complementing the educational programs, meaning they're not supplanting the educational programs. They're providing, sorry,
Service, yeah, okay,
it would support the educational programs.
thank you. Scott, I got hung up on it.
I think that's fair. And as with anything, if you're opening this up, now is your time if you don't like some of those terms, but you want this to be legislation that is used robustly, great opportunity to clean some of that up. Okay, so what do the articles of agreement have to include? Some no-brainers: the names of the participating SUs, the mission, purpose, and focus of the BOCES, the programs or services to be offered. This, I think this is interesting. There's, I've been listening to all of your conversations, and so I would just pay attention to some of these as areas where you may want to fine tune depending on what your ultimate goals are. So the articles of agreement have to include financial terms and conditions of membership, including any applicable membership fee. It's not spelled out that there has to be a membership fee, but it's also not spelled out that there can't be a membership fee. So this is going to vary depending. And then 5 is the service fees for members and the service fees for non-members. The detailed procedure for the preparation and adoption of an annual budget, the method of termination of the BOCES and withdrawal, procedure for admitting new members and amending the articles of agreement, the powers and duties of the boards of directors to operate and manage the association, including, and then A through D can speak for themselves. And then any other matter not incompatible with law that the member SUs consider necessary to the formation of the BOCES. The BOCES is managed by the board of directors, which is composed of 1 person appointed annually by each member SU board. Another area for you to think about for fine tuning. Appointed persons shall be members of the SU board or the superintendent or designee of the member of the supervisory union. Each member of the board of directors shall be entitled to a vote. No member shall serve as a member of a board of directors or as an officer or employee of any related for-profit or nonprofit organization. The board of directors has to elect a chair, and then they can provide for other officers as they determine necessary. The board of directors is empowered to establish subcommittees and create board policies and procedures. They're required to meet not fewer than 4 times annually. And each member of the board of directors is required to provide updates on the activity of the BOCES on a quarterly basis to the members appointing SU at an open board meeting. And then here is that limitation. So the secretary is required to approve articles of agreement if it meets the criteria in subsection A, I believe, subject to subsection D, and that is that there can't be more 7 BOCES. And SUs can only be a member of one BOCES, but they can seek services as non-members from however many BOCES they want.
I'm just gonna bring something up for people to ponder. So let's say there are 5 BOCES and the biggest one has 20 SUs in it. In this case, I'm using SU in the legal sense. You could have a board of directors that's 20 people big.
But you could only have a certain amount of supervisory unions inside your BOCES that are members.
There's
You
no
have more than 7
limitations.
BOCES.
There's a limitation on the number of BOCES statewide, but no limitation on how many SUs could be a member of a BOCES.
And I will say as I think about it, if there are 53 central offices, the chances of there being something that high are probably pretty slim. Now that I think about it.
And adding to that, each SUSD, because they're interchangeable in this case, gets one member. So it doesn't matter how large your particular SU is within the BOCES, you still get one voting member, no matter your size. It's not proportional.
What can a BOCES do? So in addition to any other powers granted by law, a BOCES shall have the power to provide educational programs, services, facilities, and professional and other staff that in its discretion best serves the needs of its members. BOCES are required to follow all applicable state and federal laws in its provision of services, including Section 504 and IDEA related to IEPs and special education law. This is basically saying, figure out what your members need, and then you can provide it. It's not a prescriptive list. BOCES may employ an executive director who shall serve under the general direction of the board, who shall be responsible for the care and supervision of the BOCES. The board shall annually evaluate the executive director's performance and effectiveness in implementing the programs, policies, and goals of the BOCES. And the executive director shall not serve as a board member, officer, or employee of any related for-profit or nonprofit organization. BOCES shall be a body politic and corporate and shall have standing to sue and be sued to the same extent as a school district. BOCES may enter into contracts for the purchase of supplies, materials, and services, and for the purchase of leasing of land, buildings, and equipment as considered necessary by the board of directors. And then Section 559 applies to bids on contracts and the limits related to those. So we can move past that. The board of directors of a BOCES may apply for state, federal, or private grants for which a BOCES may be otherwise eligible to obtain funds necessary to carry out the purpose for which the BOCES is established. Nothing in this chapter is intended to create an entitlement to federal funds distributed by AOE to local education agencies. Financing, budgeting, and accounting. A BOCES shall establish and manage a fund to be known as an education cooperative fund. All monies contributed by member school districts and all grants or gifts from the federal government, state government, charitable foundations, private corporations, or any other source shall be deposited into the fund. They gotta have a bank account. Treasurer. A BOCES shall appoint a treasurer who may be a treasurer of a member school district and who shall be sworn in before entering the duties of the office. The treasurer may, subject to the direction of the board of directors, receive and disperse all money belonging to the board without further appropriation. Treasurer shall keep financial records of cash receipts and disbursements and shall make those records available to the board of directors upon request. The board shall ensure that its blanket bond covers a newly appointed treasurer. So this is about, this is language borrowed from the Union School Districts chapter. In lieu of a blanket bond, they may provide suitable insurance. Board of directors may pay reasonable compensation to the treasurer and shall evaluate the treasurer's performance annually. BOCES shall use the Uniform Chart of Accounts and financial reporting requirements used by supervisory unions as its financial accounting system. Annually, a BOCES is subject to an independent audit of its financial statements consistent with generally accepted governmental auditing standards, and shall discuss and vote to accept the audit report at an open meeting of the board. The board shall transmit a copy of each audit to the boards of its member supervisory unions. Annually, a BOCES has to prepare financial statements, including a statement of net assets and a statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in net assets. And they're required to adopt a budget prior to the beginning of the fiscal year for which the budget is adopted. And then subsection G allows them to negotiate or contract for loans. Annual report to the public. BOCES is required to prepare an annual report concerning the affairs of the BOCES and have it printed and distributed to the boards of the member SUs. the report has to include at a minimum information on the programs and services offered by the BOCES, including information on the cost effectiveness of such programs and services and progress made towards achieving the objectives and purposes set forth in the Articles of Agreement and audited financial statements in the independent auditor's report. BOCES is required to maintain a website that makes the following information available to the public at no cost: a list of the members of the board of directors of the BOCES, copies of approved minutes, copy of the Articles of Agreement and any subsequent amendments, and a copy of the annual report. Employment. A BOCES shall be considered a public employer and may employ personnel, including educators, to carry out the purposes and functions of the board. Annually, the board of BOCES shall conduct an area survey of the salaries of the educators and staff employed by the BOCES member SUs and school districts. No person shall be eligible for employment by a BOCES as an educator unless the person is appropriately licensed under Chapter 51 of Title 16 by the Standards Board. A person employed by a BOCES as an educator shall be a participant in the state teachers retirement system.
Yep, back to the license, does that negate anybody on a provisional license?
I don't know the question. I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, a provisional license is still a license.
Use the term appropriately licensed.
A person who is employed by a BOCES and who is not an educator shall be a participant in the municipal employees retirement system. Educators employed by a BOCES shall be entitled to organize pursuant to Chapter 57. And employees who are not educators shall be entitled to organize pursuant to 21 VSA Chapter 22.
Can I ask a quick?
Yeah.
A BOCES wouldn't like hire any, I'm thinking on the line who's not an educator should be a participant in the Vermont Municipal Employees Retirement System. A BOCES wouldn't be like a hiring level for like a para-educator or other people that fall under the teachers system right now, would it? Like no one would be moved to another retirement system. It's
No, I think it's just to keep the retirement systems in line with what currently exists for.
all right, but no one would like get bounced from the system they're on now.
Not without choosing to.
Educators and employees who are employed by a BOCES shall be provided healthcare benefits pursuant to Chapter 61. The intent of this, I shouldn't say intent, the purpose of this language is just what your chair said, is to keep employment opportunities related to retirement, collective bargaining, and healthcare on par, the same as those provided by a school district. If it would still be an independent, I don't know how to say this correctly because I'm not your employment attorney. There's no provision in state law under the BOCES chapter for there to be kind of like okay, you're a member of the school district and now you are an employee of the BOCES, right? It would be someone applying for a brand new job and all of those provisions starting however they would start for a brand new job. There's not like a transition mechanism. So it's possible that if someone is licensed under Chapter 51 and part of the state teachers retirement system, they apply for a job at the BOCES, that they would not qualify for the state teachers retirement system by virtue of the position itself. So it's all dependent on the specific position.
And whether or not the BOCES employees collectively bargain, which they are not required to do.
Yes, that is, yes. But as far as the retirement system, if you were eligible for the state teachers retirement system in your school district, then you apply for a brand new position in a BOCES, and however that position is structured, you would actually be eligible for the municipal employees retirement system. You don't get into the teachers retirement system just because you were eligible in the school district. It's dependent on the specific position. And that's it. That's the BOCES chapter. But there was some, so this is Act 168 of 2024. You can see this is the language we just walked through here. And then, so Section 2 of this bill was all of Chapter 10. And so then there's this transition piece. So on or before July 1 of this year, Each SU is required to consider and vote on the desirability of establishing a BOCES. Again, no more than 7 statewide. SU boards that do vote to establish a BOCES shall hold an organizational meeting on or before July 1, 2027. And then on or before July 1, 2028, AOE is required to kind of give you all a report of the lay of the land. What BOCES exist or are anticipated to exist as of July 1, 2028, and then on or before November 1st, 2028. Secretary is required to issue a report to you and the state board with, again, the number that exist. Who are their member SUs? What services do they provide? The number of SUs that are not boards, not members of BOCES, and information on why they have not joined a BOCES, and recommendations for any expansion of the membership and powers of BOCES, including recommendations for whether membership in such boards shall be mandatory. And again, this report is not due back to you until July 1, 2028.
Appreciate the reminder that school districts are supposed to vote on whether they want to be part of the BOCES by July 1st, 2026.
Coming up.
I have a quick question, and I'm sure, Beth, that you answered it at the beginning of all of this. But I don't understand why we use the language of supervisory unions. And Beth Quimby said it doesn't really matter in this case, they're the same.
An SD is an SU in this. SU is like the overarching term, and under that term, you could be an SD or an SU.
You are high. This is a great example of why I hate using the term SD.
Yeah.
Because some people think that you mean school district. Some people think you mean supervisory district. Those are 2 different things. That's a policy choice. Who's the member? Part of what I remember is how big and unwieldy do you want these boards to be? If every board has a seat at the table and there's 25 school boards, and you've got a 25-member board, this is all policy. This is all policy.
But what if you live in an area where there aren't SUs in there?
And
SDs.
Hold on, let me share my screen again.
While Beth is pulling up the language that clears all this up, I would just say that under the plan that I have proposed, we would have one definition.
And I'll just say regarding the one that's currently in place while you're pulling this up, Springfield is a part of it as well, I think, as a separate district. And my SU is part of it, so I think they're total 14. Yeah.
Here's the key sentence right here.
There's the gap. Yeah.
So for this chapter, supervisory union includes a supervisory district. So if you are a school district, I always pick on Burlington because it's Burlington. Burlington is a supervisory district. It is also a standalone school district. It is a supervisory district because the school district is large enough that they would dominate the central office. So the central office is only responsible for Burlington.
So it qualifies as a supervisory district, but it does not qualify as a school district.
Burlington is a school district.
I mean, it doesn't qualify as a supervisory union as a school district. It qualifies as a supervisory union as a supervisory district because it doesn't consist of 2 or more school districts.
School districts and supervisory unions are 2 different things. So Burlington has been assigned to its own supervisory union. But because there's only one school district, it is not a union of anything. It is its own district. And so for the purposes of forming a BOCES, Burlington can join a BOCES. I'm trying to think of some other standalone school districts. Milton can join a BOCES. Colchester can join a BOCES.
What about U32?
U32 is
Supervisory district.
if it's a supervisory district, it could join a, right? But it is, so every school district in the state has been assigned to a supervisory union to provide administrative planning. Right? central office and special education services. Some supervisory unions only have the capacity to serve one school district because the school district is so large. And if it is serving only one school district, then it is a supervisory union, but we call it a supervisory district. They are one and the same. I didn't write this. I just want to, for the record, I did not write this. I will say this session, I have spent more time talking to folks on the policy committees that are responsible for making these decisions about the difference between the supervisory union and supervisory district and a school district than I ever thought possible.
Yeah.
So you are not alone in your frustration or confusion or how silly you think these distinctions are.
The way I think of it is an area that a superintendent oversees is a supervisory union,
Thank you.
whether it is just a single school district, a supervisory district, or a supervisory union.
Whether we call it that or not.
They're all supervisory unions. In order to just use one term
Yeah.
throughout the legislation.
All SDs are SUs, but not all SUs are SDs.
That's a great way to think about it.
So risky bourbon.
Superintendent.
But in this situation, we just, for this line, we're just like, you all count as supervisory unions for the language in this. So,
We could just say superintendency.
you can all join.
That's not a term that's defined in Title 16, so people are gonna ask you questions about it. I mean, as you are undergoing this education transformation thing, if you do away with the concept of supervisory unions, we no longer have to have this conversation. If you keep the concept, then maybe this is a term that needs to be updated.
And I would just, again, point out that what I had put on the table would only have school districts. All the other terminology could go away if that's a motivating factor for you.
Okay, you in the conversation, right?
I can get on board with it. Got two yes votes.
I like the maybe.
As long as we're okay about that, people change.
All right, any other questions for legislative council concerning the BOCES bill that we passed? Yes.
Question, because again, everything's a trade-off. Because this language is all voluntary and each BOCES, each CISA, whatever, that forms has to write their own articles of agreement, and they could vary widely from state to state or vary. If it were mandatory, one of the trade-offs would be there could be a single set perhaps of articles of agreement that cover all the ones formed in the state. Of course, there's a trade-off for that. There always is, because then you lose your flexibility across regions perhaps. There's that trade-off of everyone making their own and going through legal fees and figuring it all out versus here it is.
I guess I would say yes.
There's that,
And if we went voluntary, fortunately, we now have one who has done
it's
it.
done, right?
So perhaps there's a model articles of agreement sitting out there. Yeah, Leland.
Just why 7? What's the magic number with 7? Why did that happen?
Anybody who was there for the discussion want to answer that honestly?
Is it arbitrary?
Not too big, not too small.
Yeah.
We were advised to not make them too small. And so don't allow for 20 of them out there. And so we were sort of wrestling with 5 or 7, and I think we came up with 5 to 7.
So just a random number.
It was somewhat arbitrary, but it was based on some input about they sort of lose the ability to build scale if you have too many of them.
It was sort of starting again, like the task force from the superintendent regions map, but acknowledging one region has a lot more students and schools, and so there might need to be more particular
Yeah.
around Chittenden County.
Yeah.
Or break that up some.
Arbitrary, but not completely arbitrary.
Right,
Thoughtfully arbitrary.
yes.
So
That's definitely language the Supreme Court wants.
Yeah.
I like it though.
Leanne, you're up.
I'm just wondering with the number 7, this is probably way too simple, but like with 14 counties, could we just give each county a budget buddy? And I mean, just pair them up. Maybe that's too simplified.
You know, is a CISA that is Essex County. There's not enough there to create a CISA. I would argue.
Right.
And in fact, there wasn't an ours, same.
Right, yeah, I mean, you're multiple counties, 2 counties, right?
It's totally county. And Windsor's a pretty big county.
Do the numbers of students in the CISA, so I know that like, in looking at supervisory unions, we are like, okay, 2,000 to 4,000 students or 4,000 to 8,000 students, depending on who you ask. Is there that kind of a specific number for CISAs? No.
I mean, nobody has mentioned that to us.
Okay.
I mean, and we've heard from a lot of CISA experts at this point. And you know, and so we did have some language in the stuff I put on the table, that, you know, we're not necessarily, we're talking about if we're going to be mandatory or not mandatory, what are we demanding that they do? So we had provided a list of, they have to offer at least one of these services. You know, maybe all they're going to offer is transportation. Not sure where I was going with that, except to say,
Be some flexibility.
yeah. Or more importantly, it's not necessarily something that's based on number of students. You know, if they're providing back office payroll services. So I guess I would say that, you know, if we chose to go a mandatory route, there's going to be work involved, and maybe it doesn't have to be done this session, but when you're mandatory, you have to really define the parameters of what each season is going to be doing.
But making the CISAs mandatory doesn't necessarily make merged districts mandatory. So theoretically, towns could still have some autonomy about the future of their schools if we did mandatory CISAs.
CISAs have nothing to do with
Right.
governance of schools. Yeah.
So,
I mean, basically, what we're essentially exploring here is the recommendation of the redistricting task force.
and so this would still work and this would still save money even if we don't mandate consolidated districts.
I would, you know, in theory, it would save money. We hope it would save money.
I mean, but we're not seeing that consolidated districts would save any money either. No one's presented us with a number there either.
That's a whole other discussion.
I mean, isn't this all one big discussion though?
Yes, I mean, we could break out the evidence that consolidation could save money just based on the fact that we would have, under the map that I put out there, half the number of central offices that we have today.
I guess I'm wondering whether, did we ever see, I'm looking at the article, the memo from the secretary to the BOCES that's now in place. It's 26 pages long. Did we ever see that as a committee? Because I actually, I mean, you might not want to read the whole thing, but frankly, I think it's really helpful to see how.
Would you send a link to that
I will
around?
send it to Matt and can send it to us. It was on the secretary website.
I mean, would it be possible under this plan to still consolidate central offices by like saying every county gets one superintendent or something? I mean, I guess, right, then that'd be making county SUs and that's the, I'm just trying to think.
Or
this
SDs.
SDs, right? It seems like you could still consolidate the number of central offices without consolidating the number of schools and save at least some money.
I would say nothing in Act 73 talks about consolidated schools.
We do keep saying that, but that's true.
No, but that's because you said We can do that. If we do that, we won't have to consolidate schools. I'm just saying, it doesn't say anything about consolidating schools. Yeah,
I can speak to the county position because I was one on the task force that looked at county map. There are a lot of supervisory districts and unions that cross county lines, more than don't. So going by county was abandoned rather quickly, and said people always ask about county. And there a lot of school districts cross counties currently, or supervisory unions and supervisory districts.
And that was because we didn't want to change any.
Well,
Existing.
if you want to, you'd have to break them all apart to go by county. And you're
I
not.
think it's fair to say we've had a long history of.
Drastic different too.
Representative Brady?
Going back to the VSA testimony we've gotten a couple of times this year, probably obvious to all of us, but they were supportive of CSAs, but that alone is not the solution to affordability and equity challenges. In their testimony, they said Act 73 proposes to restrain spending. Patrick Green talked about like a grocery budget via the foundation formula and without significantly addressing the inefficiencies that exist at the school level. And that leaves the decisions about whether to create efficiency or not up to local communities. I guess a bit of between what you're both saying in terms of whether or not this is about schools, but they're once again, very clear. SDs will save more money and be more equitable than SUs.
Right. So we have discussed CSAs. Further discussion on this. I'm not asking anybody to make a decision on anything
I really
right
like
now.
the idea that you can be a member of one and you can pay for services from another. And that there's going to be all the stuff out there and your district can get what it needs.
Assuming that the CISA that you are not part of has the capacity to provide you with what you're looking for.
Or that another one can.
Yeah.
Correct.
I'm gonna go back to my original struggle.
Yep.
Is the CISAs a later conversation after the difficult SDSU conversation and the map conversation?
Yes. I think so. But sensing strong consensus around the concept and its potential, I thought we'd go for some positive talk.
I appreciate it.
Same with school construction aid, which I feel we've got strong consensus on. But yes,
Pretty good consensus on maybe regional middle and high schools from yesterday. It was pretty good
yes.
talk about.
Yeah.
And then we heard it again in the East, Kingdom East.
One thing that we probably need to be cognizant of as we talk about that as a priority is what we've already set in place for the school construction working group to develop their criteria. Their criteria I would very, very generally describe as fewer and newer. But I don't think we said anything about high schools or middle schools. Just about that. So we find ourselves back to maps and guiding language to go with those maps. And where we are as a committee. I would say aside from like, I think Waterford needs to be put with this instead of that, and these guys need to be put over here. We're still talking about the concept of that I have, but we are, as you all know, we have a clock ticking really loudly behind us. I do not believe we have made any progress other than entertain various ideas. I think many people remain very torn over what to do. I think many people would like more information that may not be readily available. So given all of that, what do we do? And talk among yourselves.
Are you looking for feedback?
I don't know how we're going to, but we need to get by the SDF conversation. And that's the conversation I'm dreading having. Because I think it's gonna be not the most difficult, but one of the most difficult. Oh, we can't get past that. And
But we can always get past things.
how,
Yes, exactly. It'd be great to get past things by consensus. Emily?
Just lost my train of thought for a second, but, you said something about many of us want, I'm paraphrasing, but many of us want information that isn't readily available. That's pretty significant challenge for me. Just mentioning it, I'm not sure what you were referring to. I've got things in my head, but that's a hard, when you're being asked to make hard decisions that really impact not just the folks you represent in the schools and school districts, but the state of Vermont. And I will always seek more information wherever I can to help inform decisions.
We do have our constant round robin here of, I'd like to know what the impact of the foundation formula is. Response, can't really tell you that until you decide on districts. Don't really want to decide on districts until I know what the impact is. I'm not quite sure how we do that.
Well, that might lead to my question. Because I think it's kind of a process question. But I carry around my lovely timeline. I see a clear bullet, 2026 session, General Assembly intent to enact school district boundaries, updates to CTE, updates to pre-K, begin process of voting boards, and report on regional reappraisals. But I think not just about don't want to know, do one without knowing the other. What I want to understand is process for us here at the legislature. If we could agree on all these things and get a map and enact new district boundaries this year, do we as the legislature under Act 73 have to, are like definitely doing further work on or a sort of check back on the foundation formula? Because there's so many outstanding questions in the foundation formula. So like, I know that districts, there's an interplay there, but there are also many other really big unanswered questions in the foundation formula. And I know that lots of good work will go on between JFO and the committees and the consultants, but as a legislator elected from my district, do I get a say again for an opportunity to impact the decisions in that foundation formula? Or is it basically once the map is done, yes, all that work is supposed to happen, but it's not necessarily within.
Are we locked in?
Yeah.
If we pass maps this year?
A question for me.
Yes.
If to the extent you feel comfortable answering it.
Well, you're never locked in because you can't bind the hands of a future legislature. So regardless of the language we're about to look at and anything else I say, if you don't like it, you can change it this year, you can change it next year, you can change it up until it's implemented, right? And even after it's implemented, you can then enact new law to bring you back to where it was before. So
I guess if absent us changing something now or a new legislature changing something, the interplay, obviously, I've been bringing this up a lot, but I'm just increasingly concerned about what I know here versus what I know on the foundation formula side of things. And they are so directly tied to each other and impact future of our schools.
So this is the contingency. So this is Act 73. We're in section 70, the effective date section, and subsection F is the contingency language for the foundation formula. And it reads, The following sections shall take effect on July 1, 2028, and then everything after that is the contingency. Provided that the new school districts contemplated by this act drive a bus through that, right? What depending on the new school districts you enact, you know, do they meet that contemplated by this act requirement? But it's not just that the boundaries are drawn, it's that those new school districts have assumed the responsibility for the education of all resident students. That means they are operational. And so that's number one. Number two is that the expert tasked with developing a cost factor foundation formula has provided to the General Assembly the report pursuant to Section 45A. That's the report that JFO has been talking about that they just went under contract for. That's two. And then three is that you all have had an opportunity to enact legislation in consideration of the report. So that contingency may not be met if on July 1, 2028, we have another global pandemic and you all aren't meeting and you haven't had an opportunity to enact that legislation, right? Or there's some other act of nature that happens to prevent you from having the opportunity to enact that legislation. But if all three of those things click into place, then the foundation formula goes into effect without any further acts of the legislature.
We have an opportunity to, but we don't. But the legislature, whoever that is, that has an opportunity to, but does not have to enact legislation? I don't understand.
Related to the 45A report, which would be updating the foundation formula.
Weights.
Right, but again, sorry, it's like, we have to enact or we could?
No, we have.
An opportunity to enact.
I appreciate that. I was saying that too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's definitely a point I've been pretty interested in recently as well. You know, so the General Assembly having an opportunity to enact legislation, you know, we've seen the, you know, political whims of this body. So the fact that we potentially can't come to agreement in the future around what those final sort of pieces of the foundation formula are is not going to stop the foundation formula from becoming effective. Yes. So I guess, I think it's really important, and Beth, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's important for people to understand we have a default option, which is the foundation formula that is currently written in Act 73. We have an opportunity to update it, but if we can't functionally as a legislature update it or come to agreement, that the default is what we have written in the law.
Yes, what is written in Act 73 would contingently take effect on July 1, 2028.
I think, not sure that's clear to everyone.
Oh, to be honest, I did not fully realize that.
So, right, so it sounds like we can revisit.
Like,
I mean,
yeah, my blood pressure, right?
Well,
I
This
thought
is-
it was actually not an opportunity, it was a must.
right.
It was a.
Right, so given that, think about if that is a change that can be made that would make you feel more comfortable. And right now, rather than sort of saying what's wrong with everything, let's be all about how can we fix it and make me more comfortable with it, make you more comfortable with it. Yeah, Representative McCann?
Again, I think I just need a repeat. Did we just say that regardless of whether we draw new maps or not right now, during this legislative,
Got to have maps.
No.
That is definitely a strict contingency.
if we draw maps? If we don't draw maps, then the foundation formula won't go in effect in 2028.
right.
And there's also an option to draw maps at any point between now and then as well.
Right, just as there is, we could adopt the foundation formula and draw no maps. We could, the legislature could say, we're just going to do the foundation formula, period.
That'd be a different bill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
That
bill
wasn't what I was
requires
saying.
a map. And not just the map, but all those new units, governing units, I'm just gonna call them that for now,
being operational.
are operational.
I'm gonna say that I'm still hopeful that maybe we can come up with a hybrid map that's using SDs, fewer districts, larger districts. I'm holding out hope.
Okay, we need more than that. Hope
Concrete,
is not getting us nowhere.
okay,
If you guys are sort of committed to these models,
wow,
then you need to put together a presentation. You don't have to draw any maps, but you can talk about how it would work and why it is the better way to go. Yep.
You said it's a very large.
Pretty grim. Especially as we sort of relitigate some of the sort of governance side of things that if we have any hope of doing this right, I do think we have to come back as a legislature to the foundation formula, right? And use that information, not just consider it, not just have an opportunity, but have to make a decision based on it. And I think we should go back to the original House timeline. You know, it would take one more year too. That is 2028 is very soon. Going back to Patrick Green's testimony, he talked about what it took to, you know, merge essentially changing nothing in a, almost in a, you know, from, and it took 18 months to get, you know, 5 boards down to 1, but really nothing else changed structurally. So I can say, put those both out there separately, but those are things I feel strongly about at this point in our process.
Could you explore the concept of some sort of check back
Yes,
outside
yes,
at some point?
absolutely,
Discuss that.
absolutely.
The timeline, I would just remind everybody, is contingent on meeting all the deadlines within it. And if you don't meet those deadlines, the timeline is off.
That makes me think that if we went ahead and went with a map, that we could use that, whatever's going on during that time, to get with the program to figure out what's going to happen with the foundation formula. Right?
Yes.
But if we don't go with a map, then we're just delaying what the foundation formula will look like under a new map.
Which essentially,
And we can change the map if we don't. I mean, maybe we don't want to change it too many times, but since they're gonna be doing their thing. It might turn out that one town is just like, no, it can't be those people.
Jenna, do you have something more to add?
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, and anyone, please correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I think in order for the consultants referenced in Act 73 to sort of model out these foundation formula pieces, they need, I mean, I think a map is necessary to at least start to do that work. Or at least to play out a scenario that we could then come back and consider.
So we asked this question, right, the other day, and I can't remember who we asked. We've had so many people cycling through this room, but I remember us asking the question and hearing that we couldn't model this until we had a map. My question related to that is, does it need to be a map we voted on, or does it need, can it be a map that we're, you know, considering? Or could it be, you know, you see what I'm saying? Where I'm gonna go back to my first comment, which is I need data to be able to speak to my communities and say, this really challenging step we're taking to change Vermont's education system, which is going to really impact you in many ways, has benefits as well. And here's what they are. And this is what I've been trying to get at all along while we've been talking about BOCES, while we've been talking about school construction aid, while we talked about yesterday about regional middle and high schools. And I say that also about the impetus that drove this legislation in the first place, which was, how does it reduce your property taxes? I'm going to narrow it down to that. reduce spending, reduce property taxes. I'm not seeing any evidence that we've had yet that that's going to happen. Maybe some of this will help define that to some degree. I'm open to almost anything, but I need to be able to say, the goals of I've been talking about for years and years and years are on the way to being met. And that requires some data and modeling.
To your original question, do we need to can they do modeling without us voting on districts? I suppose the answer is yes. My concern would be that then it would be like, well, how about if we do 26 districts that look like this? And how about if it's just,
Totally understand. That's what we heard. So I get it. Chicken and eggs. I do.
Did we all hear, I think in testimony with Julia Victor from JFO, I mean, so the foundation formula that sort of helped create, or the analysis that helped create the foundation formula in Act 73, I think is based on 14 or 15 districts.
The SBA.
So I think it's important for folks to understand that was that piece of work, and
I do not remember her saying that.
So I don't necessarily
Maybe
remember him
clarity
saying
on
that, but
that.
I do remember what you're saying. I agree that 14 and 15 was.
I think we need to
Do
understand.
you mind
Dan,
emailing and getting some clarification? Because I've
because-
always thought it was based on current spending.
Based on our current portfolio schools.
Right, but I think
Yeah.
the district concept,
Which districts it is for grand list values.
for people who are interested in evaluating sort of what the current foundation formula is and what we might ultimately land on, I think it's important to know how far we are, or how far we are from what we've been looking at.
All right, so let's get that information.
If I can just say one more thing related to that. In my many, many conversations with my district, legislative district, it has become very clear to me that the foundation formula is sort of like a two-word concept that almost no one understands. And boy, they understand maps big time. And so the focus goes on the maps and not on the impact of a foundation formula. That is a significant shift in the way we fund the way we provide. I'm not even going to say fund because it's actually bigger than our funding. The way we provide education in Vermont. And this is one of my worries about not having modeling and better data behind it, because I can't stand up and definitively say it's going to meet, what I'm hoping, what everybody's telling me that.
I will put right out there, I don't think anybody's going to tell you it's going to make property taxes go down, except on average, we have to say that on average, or cut spending. It is to bend the cost curve and provide some sort of state level oversight and control of the money. It's not going to,
Exactly what people heard when we were working this way last year. Whether language was said that way, but I think the understanding was that we needed to do this to reduce our property taxes. That's why I'm trying to say I don't think there's a full understanding.
Yeah. So we're going to get some, Anna's going to look at some information. Aaron's going to talk about language for checkbacks. What else did we throw out there
Matt
for?
sent that to us.
What's that?
Trying to figure out some.
Oh, so you guys are going to basically, we're going to have debate society and talk about the SUSD thing.
Which also includes non-operating choice that we've talked about.
Yeah, all these issues have to be ironed out. If legislative council has time, I would recommend not having necessarily legislation written up, but might say, hey, what are some of the questions that we might get asked? Or what are some of the flags that if this were legislation, we should be aware of?
What legislation?
Yeah.
Your ideas?
Just ideas.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So what I'm saying is, this is not to write legislation yet, but if we're gonna discuss it here, I want everybody to be as well informed as possible on the position that they're taking. Those are legal consultations.
Gonna put a deli ticket thing.
Exactly. All right, do people want to talk anymore, or shall we take a 15